in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Democrats on the House Oversight Committee, minutes ago, literally, releasing emails that they say were written by Jeffrey Epstein that explicitly, specifically mentioned Donald Trump by name and in context that we really haven't heard before. Let's get right to Caitlin Collins, who's got this reporting. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Yeah, John, these are emails that show Jeffrey Epstein mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times in private correspondence that he had with people, including Ghislaine Maxwell, obviously his longtime associate and accomplice, and also the author, Michael Wolff.
Okay, so this is the moment Trump has been dreading for years. The Epstein nightmare just became real. A federal judge just dropped a bombshell order forcing the release of previously sealed Epstein documents. And these aren't just any documents. These are emails where Jeffrey Epstein allegedly wrote that Trump knew about the girls he was trafficking, photos showing Trump at Epstein gatherings, communications that the Trump administration has been fighting desperately to keep secret. Over 20,000 pages of evidence connecting Trump to one of the most horrific criminal conspiracies in modern American history. And a judge just said, release it all, make it public. Let the American people see what their president knew and when he knew it. This is devastating. This is Trump's worst nightmare coming true in real time. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
And so they've gotten their hands on a trove of documents, and these are emails that included Jeffrey Epstein on them. They were sent either to him or from him that mentioned Donald Trump before he was in office and also while he was in office during his first term. And I want to walk you through these emails of what exactly we are reading in Jeffrey Epstein's own words in these emails that have been released by the House Oversight Committee.
The judge's order came after the House Oversight Committee had already started releasing Epstein documents. Congress dropped over 20,000 pages that they'd obtained through investigations documents that include direct email exchanges mentioning Trump, references to underage victims who worked at Mar-a-Lago, specific allegations about Trump's knowledge of Epstein's trafficking operation. All of it now part of the public record. And the judge looked at that congressional release and said, we need more transparency. There are additional sealed documents in the court system, jury materials, FBI files, communications that have been kept confidential, and all of that needs to be unsealed too. The public has a right to know justice requires transparency. So the judge ordered everything released. No more stonewalling, no more claims of executive privilege or confidential investigations. Just full disclosure of what the courts know about Trump's connections to Jeffrey Epstein. Congress and the courts are erupting. Democrats are calling for immediate investigations. They're demanding Trump be questioned under oath about his relationship with Epstein. They're saying these documents prove Trump lied when he claimed he barely knew Epstein, that he wasn't close with him, that he had no idea what Epstein was doing. The documents apparently show the opposite, that Trump and Epstein were close, that they socialized regularly, that Trump was at Epstein's properties multiple times, and most damning, that Epstein himself said Trump knew about the trafficking. That's not speculation, that's not conspiracy theory, that's Epstein, in his own words, allegedly saying Trump knew about the girls. Some Republicans are even joining the calls for transparency because this isn't just about politics anymore. This is about children being trafficked and abused, and people across the political spectrum want to know who was involved and who knew about it. Even MAGA supporters who've been demanding the Epstein client list be released, they're starting to realize that list might include Trump, and they want the truth. They want to know if the president they support was connected to a child sex trafficker. The Trump White House is in full panic mode. They're calling the document releases out of context. They're saying the emails are being misinterpreted. They're claiming Trump cut ties with Epstein years ago and had nothing to do with his crimes. But those defenses are getting harder to maintain because the documents keep coming, and each batch includes more damaging evidence, more photos, more emails, more references to Trump's presence at Epstein events, more connections between Trump and Epstein's operation. At some point, out of context stops being a credible defense. At some point, you have to confront the actual evidence. And the evidence is mounting to a point where Trump can't explain it away anymore. The judge's order specifically mentioned efforts to keep Epstein's client list and Trump's ties out of public view. That language is significant. because it suggests the judge believes there's been a cover-up. That people in positions of power have been trying to hide evidence about who was involved with Epstein, and the judge is saying, no more, we're going to expose all of it. We're going to make it public. And if powerful people get implicated, so be it. Justice matters more than protecting reputations. The newly released materials include photos and videos showing Trump at Epstein gatherings. These aren't just random encounters at public events. These are private parties, social gatherings at Epstein's properties. Events where, according to victim testimony, underage girls were present. Trump has always claimed he wasn't really friends with Epstein, that they maybe crossed paths at social events but weren't close. But the photos and videos show otherwise. They show Trump and Epstein together repeatedly, socializing, laughing, clearly comfortable with each other. That visual evidence contradicts Trump's denials, makes it much harder for him to claim he barely knew Epstein. Congressional leaders from both parties are demanding more DOJ transparency. They're saying the Justice Department has been sitting on documents that should be public, that Attorney General Pam Bondi has been protecting Trump by refusing to release the full Epstein files. And they're putting pressure on federal prosecutors to pursue possible obstruction charges. Because if people in the Trump administration have been actively hiding evidence about Trump's Epstein connections, that's obstruction of justice. That's a crime. And it needs to be investigated. One congressional leader said, the more Trump tries to cover up the Epstein files, the more we uncover that's proving true. Because every attempt to keep documents sealed creates more suspicion. Every claim of executive privilege or confidential investigation raises questions about what's being hidden. And judges in Congress are starting to reject those claims. They're saying transparency matters more than Trump's desire for secrecy. The American people deserve to know the truth, and the truth is coming out whether Trump likes it or not. All right, so let's dig into exactly what these newly released documents reveal and why they represent such a devastating blow to Trump's claims of innocence regarding Epstein. The most explosive piece of evidence is the email where Epstein allegedly wrote that Trump knew about the girls he was trafficking. That's a direct statement from Epstein himself. Now, Epstein was a liar and a criminal, so his word alone isn't necessarily reliable. But when you combine that email with all the other evidence, photos showing Trump at Epstein's properties, flight logs, victim testimony, a pattern emerges. A pattern that suggests Trump wasn't just casually acquainted with Epstein. He was in Epstein's orbit during the time when Epstein's crimes were being committed. And according to Epstein himself, Trump knew what was happening. That's devastating. Because it means Trump wasn't an innocent bystander. He wasn't someone who happened to know a guy who turned out to be a criminal. He allegedly knew about the crimes while they were happening and did nothing, didn't report it, didn't distance himself, just continued being friends with a child sex trafficker. The documents also reference specific underage victims who were employed at Mar-a-Lago. That connection between Epstein's trafficking operation and Trump's property is particularly damning because it suggests Epstein was recruiting victims from Trump's club, that Trump's property was part of the infrastructure Epstein used for his crimes. Whether Trump knew about that specifically is unclear from the released documents. But the fact that Epstein was using Mar-a-Lago as a hunting ground for victims raises serious questions about what Trump knew. And when the judge's order to release previously sealed materials is significant because it suggests the court system has been sitting on evidence that should have been public jury materials from Epstein cases, FBI investigative files, communications between investigators and prosecutors. All of that has been kept confidential, supposedly to protect ongoing investigations or victim privacy. But the judge is now saying those justifications don't outweigh the public's right to know. That transparency is more important, that the American people deserve to see all the evidence about who was connected to Epstein. This is a major shift in judicial approach. Courts have been very protective of sealed materials in Epstein cases. They've been reluctant to release documents that might identify victims or compromise investigations. But this judge is taking a different approach, saying that too much has been hidden for too long, that the secrecy has enabled a cover-up, that powerful people have been protected when they should have been exposed. So the judge is ordering a wholesale release of sealed materials. That's going to include names, photos, communications, evidence that was never meant to become public. And it's going to implicate a lot of people beyond just Trump. But Trump is the most prominent name, and he's the one with the most to lose. The photos and videos showing Trump at Epstein gatherings are particularly damaging because they're visual proof that Trump's denials are false. Trump has always claimed he wasn't close with Epstein, that they maybe saw each other at social events but weren't really friends. But the photos show them together at private parties, at Epstein's mansion, at events where, according to victim testimony, underage girls were present and being exploited. One set of footage reportedly shows Trump and Epstein at a party in the 1990s. They're laughing together. Clearly comfortable, clearly friends. And this is before Epstein's first conviction. This is during the time when Epstein's trafficking operation was most active. So Trump was socializing with Epstein while Epstein was actively trafficking minors. And the email suggests Trump knew what Epstein was doing. That's not just guilt by association. That's potential knowledge of ongoing crimes. The documents also reveal efforts by the Trump administration to keep Epstein files sealed. Communications between the White House and the Justice Department about how to handle Epstein-related investigations, discussions about what documents should be released and what should remain classified, and according to sources, those communications show a clear pattern of trying to protect Trump, of ensuring that documents directly implicating Trump don't become public. That's obstruction. That's using government power to cover up potential crimes. And it's exactly what congressional investigations are going to focus on. Attorney General Pam Bondi is at the center of this cover-up. She's been fighting to keep Epstein documents sealed. She's claimed that releasing them would harm victims or compromise investigations. But victims' advocates are saying that's not true, that victims want the truth to come out, that they want everyone involved to be held accountable, and that Bondi has been using victim protection as an excuse to protect powerful people, particularly Trump. Congressional testimony has included statements from former DOJ officials who say they were pressured to limit the scope of Epstein investigations to avoid pursuing leads that might implicate Trump or other high-profile figures, to focus on Epstein and his direct associates rather than on the broader network of people who enabled his crimes. That testimony is incredibly damaging because it suggests a systematic cover-up at the highest levels of government, a deliberate effort to protect Trump from scrutiny over his Epstein connections. The judge's order is forcing all of that into the open. It's making it impossible for the Trump administration to continue hiding evidence because once a judge orders documents released, refusing to comply is contempt of court. That's a crime. So the administration has no choice but to produce the documents. And as those documents become public, as more evidence of Trump's connections to Epstein emerges, the political and legal pressure on Trump is going to intensify dramatically. Now let's talk about what this means for ongoing investigations. Multiple states have active investigations into Epstein's trafficking network. They're looking at who else was involved, who enabled the crimes, who knew about them and did nothing. And these newly released documents are going to feed directly into those investigations. Prosecutors in New York, Florida, and other jurisdictions are going to read these documents. They're going to see the evidence of Trump's connections. They're going to see Epstein's alleged statement that Trump knew about the trafficking. And they're going to have to decide whether there's enough evidence to charge Trump with crimes related to Epstein's operation. Now, charging a sitting president is complicated, but the evidence is mounting. And if prosecutors conclude that Trump had knowledge of Epstein's crimes and did nothing, or worse, if they conclude Trump participated in or enabled those crimes, they might decide prosecution is necessary regardless of Trump's position. The documents also create political problems beyond the legal issues, because even if Trump is never charged with crimes related to Epstein, even if prosecutors decide there's not enough evidence, the court of public opinion is different. Voters don't need proof beyond reasonable doubt. They can look at this evidence. Photos of Trump with Epstein, emails suggesting Trump knew about trafficking, patterns of the Trump administration covering up documents, and they can conclude that Trump is morally compromised, that he's not fit to be president, that his connections to Epstein disqualify him from leadership. And that political judgment could be more damaging than any legal charges. The White House's response has been defensive and unconvincing. They keep saying the documents are being taken out of context, but they won't explain what the proper context is. They won't provide alternative interpretations that make Trump look innocent. They just dismiss everything as politically motivated attacks. That strategy isn't working anymore because there's too much evidence, too many documents, too many photos, too many connections. At some point, dismissing everything as fake news stops being credible. At some point, you have to actually address the evidence. And Trump's team isn't doing that. They're just attacking the people releasing the documents and hoping that's enough. Congressional response has been remarkable because it includes some Republicans, not many, but some. There are Republican lawmakers who are demanding transparency on Epstein, who are saying they want to see the full client list regardless of who it implicates, who are acknowledging that the evidence against Trump is troubling and needs to be investigated. That's significant because it suggests this issue might transcend partisan divides, that Republicans aren't going to uniformly defend Trump on Epstein, that some of them care more about truth and justice than about protecting their party's leader. The bipartisan pressure for full disclosure is something the Trump administration can't easily dismiss. When both parties are demanding documents be released, when judges are ordering transparency, when victims are calling for accountability, it becomes impossible to maintain the cover-up. The truth is going to come out. It's just a question of how much damage Trump suffers in the process. Okay, so let's break down what this judge's bombshell order means for Trump, for ongoing Epstein investigations, and for public trust in government. Point 1. The judge's order to release sealed Epstein documents represents the end of Trump-era DOJ stonewalling on this issue. For years, the Trump administration has been fighting to keep Epstein documents secret. They've claimed executive privilege, national security concerns, victim privacy, ongoing investigations. Every excuse in the book to avoid releasing documents that might implicate Trump and a judge just said no more. The public's right to know outweighs those concerns. Transparency matters more than protecting powerful people. Release everything. That's a fundamental shift. It signals that courts are no longer going to enable the cover-up, that judicial patience with Trump's stonewalling has run out, and it opens the floodgates. Because once one judge orders transparency, other judges are likely to follow suit. Other sealed materials in other jurisdictions are likely to be unsealed. The dam is breaking, and Trump can't stop it. Point 2. The specific content of the released documents, particularly Epstein's alleged statement that Trump knew about the trafficking, is devastating to Trump's credibility. Trump has spent years claiming he barely knew Epstein, that they weren't close, that he had no idea what Epstein was doing. Every one of those claims is contradicted by the newly released documents. The photos show they were close. The emails suggest Trump knew about Epstein's crimes. Victim testimony places Trump at locations where exploitation was happening. This isn't circumstantial anymore. This is direct evidence that Trump lied about his relationship with Epstein and his knowledge of Epstein's crimes that destroys Trump's defenses. He can't claim ignorance when Epstein allegedly said Trump knew. He can't claim distance when photos show them together repeatedly. The evidence makes Trump's denials look like obvious lies. And once you've been caught lying about something this serious, everything else you say becomes suspect. Point 3. The connection between Epstein's operation and Mar-a-Lago raises questions about Trump's potential legal liability beyond just knowledge of crimes. If Epstein was recruiting victims from Trump's property, if Mar-a-Lago was part of the infrastructure enabling Epstein's trafficking, then Trump might have legal exposure beyond just failing to report crimes he knew about. He might be liable for providing the venue where crimes occurred, for employing victims who were then exploited, for creating the environment that enabled trafficking. Those are potentially serious charges. They go beyond just knowing about crimes to potentially facilitating them, even if unintentionally. Prosecutors are going to look carefully at the Mar-a-Lago connection. They're going to investigate whether Trump knew Epstein was recruiting from his club, whether Trump should have known, whether Trump bears any responsibility for what happened to those victims. Those investigations could lead to charges that would be devastating both legally and politically. Point 4. The evidence of Trump administration efforts to cover up Epstein documents creates potential obstruction charges against multiple officials. It's not just about what Trump knew about Epstein's crimes back in the 1990s and 2000s. It's also about what the Trump administration has been doing recently to hide that information, using government power to keep documents sealed, pressuring DOJ officials to limit investigations, fighting judicial orders for transparency. All of that is potentially obstruction of justice, and it implicates not just Trump, but everyone in his administration who participated in the cover-up. Attorney General Pam Bondi is particularly exposed. She's been the public face of efforts to keep Epstein documents sealed. She's made the arguments in court. She's issued the directives to DOJ lawyers. If prosecutors decide those efforts constituted obstruction, Bondi could face charges. So could other senior officials involved in the cover-up. This isn't just about historical crimes. This is about ongoing obstruction happening right now. Point 5, the bipartisan congressional pressure for full Epstein disclosure shows this issue transcends normal partisan divisions. Usually Republicans defend Trump reflexively, Democrats attack him reflexively, and the public divides along partisan lines. But Epstein is different because it's about children being exploited, and people across the political spectrum agree that's evil. They want everyone involved to be held accountable. They want the full truth to come out. So you're seeing some Republicans join Democrats in demanding transparency, in calling for investigations, in acknowledging that the evidence against Trump is troubling, that bipartisan momentum is powerful. It makes it much harder for Trump to dismiss this as just another partisan witch hunt. It creates political space for serious investigations and potential prosecutions, and it suggests that Trump might not have the Republican protection he's enjoyed on other issues. So what's the bottom line? A federal judge just dropped a bombshell order forcing release of sealed Epstein documents. Those documents include devastating evidence about Trump's connections to Epstein emails, where Epstein allegedly said Trump knew about the trafficking, photos showing them together at private parties, references to victims employed at Mar-a-Lago, all of it now becoming public. The judge's order represents the end of Trump administration stonewalling. Courts are demanding transparency, Congress is demanding accountability, and the evidence is mounting to a point where Trump can't explain it away. His denials are contradicted by documents. His claims of distance are contradicted by photos. His assertions of ignorance are contradicted by Epstein's own alleged statements. Trump's Epstein nightmare is coming true. The connections he's tried to hide are being exposed. The cover-up he orchestrated is being revealed. And the political and legal consequences are going to be severe. This matters because it's about one of the most horrific criminal conspiracies in American history. Children were trafficked and abused. Powerful people were involved or had knowledge of it. And there's been a systematic cover-up to protect those powerful people. The judge's bombshell order is breaking that cover-up, forcing transparency, ensuring that everyone involved, regardless of how powerful they are, faces scrutiny. That includes Trump. The evidence suggests he knew about Epstein's crimes, that he socialized with Epstein during the time those crimes were being committed, that his property was used as part of Epstein's operation, and that his administration has been covering up documents that prove all of this. Those are serious allegations. They demand serious investigations. And now, thanks to the judge's order, those investigations can move forward with full access to the evidence. Trump can't hide anymore. He can't stonewall. He can't keep the documents sealed. The truth is coming out, and it's worse than anyone imagined. This is Trump's Epstein nightmare, and it's just beginning.